Hi, long range hunting. Welcome to episode 1 of ballistic gel testing with match and hunting bullets.
Smoking head.
Now today we're covering a ballistic gel test. Now what I'm doing is I'm going to, as these episodes go on, is I'm going to replicate different animals. And what I mean by that is I have the measurements for the depth of penetration from the hide to the vitals, the vital depth to the outside, the entire path of that bullet, what you're looking at. Now I opted not to put anything on the offside as far as meat, bone, anything, hide, because ultimately the offside doesn't do you any good. That bullet performance has to happen inside. What it does on the opposite side, that opposite, rib cage and hide, it really doesn't matter. This is an archery. People get confused with that with exit holes. Now archery, I always want an exit hole. 2 holes are better than 1. However, bullets are completely different than archery. Arrows kill by blood loss. So do bullets technically, but an arrow's not giving you hydraulic shock or hydrostatic shock. It's not giving you that giant permanent wound cavity if you get proper performance. And today we're comparing the Barnes TSX, and unfortunately due to political circumstances, ammunition, bullets, reload supplies is very hard to find. So I could not find 168 and 168 to compare these two. So I got a 180 grain Barnes TSX, and I've got a 168 grain ELD Match. Now, I didn't really do load development for this rifle. I just ran some of my other ammunition through it, my reloads. And so the ELD Match is coming out slower than what I normally push it for a 168 grain. It's coming out at 2670. This worked out great for the simple fact of a good comparison of when I checked out the 180 grains, I'm pushing them at 2650. So we only have a difference muzzle velocity wise of 20 feet per second. So it's very close. We're getting around the same impact velocities. Now, in theory, and at least in most people's theory, the heavier grain bullet should triumph. It should have an edge. Bullet construction, though, is key. And this is going to show you definitively why bullet construction is so critical. Now, to debunk something real quick, match bullets do expand. Here's a prime example. This is from our test that I did today. I went over to Alabama for this. A friend was nice enough to let me come out and do the short range portion, episode 1, which is 200 yards and in. Now, the reason that match bullets, and I covered this in other videos, but it's something to repeat because a lot of people don't know. The reason match bullets are not recommended for hunting, quote unquote recommended, is because of the Geneva Conventions. It's because of contracts and marketing. A lot of people don't realize that. The brilliant politicians decided that anything that was hunting or expanding listed was inhumane for combat. Because a bullet that expands and gives good terminal ballistics resulting in a quick, clean kill is inhumane. But shooting them with a full metal jacket that has terrible ballistics, yeah, they're politicians. I mean, you can blow somebody up, you can light them on fire, but of course an expanding bullet's a problem. Anyways, now bullet construction is key. Now, when shooting, we have 3 ballistics that we have to take into effect. We have internal ballistics, that's what happens inside the gun, inside that barrel. You have external ballistics, that's what happens as that bullet travels through the air. So your wind, your bullet drop, humidity, temperature, all that is your external ballistics. And then once you hit your final part of that flight path into that animal, you have what's called terminal ballistics. Now, terminal ballistics is one of the most misunderstood things about shooting and hunting. Now, even external ballistics is very misunderstood. There's a lot of people that don't know what they're talking about out there. But terminal ballistics is the #1 thing that is just people don't have a clue. And it's also the most important because you got to understand what that bullet is doing. Now, if you're in the group, we have whole sections devoted to this, showing different bullets, the bullet construction, impact velocities, and wound cavities, pictures of animals, videos of animals. Those are the field results. The only reason I'm doing this is to simply give a visual image because unfortunately, we don't have any way to get a camera inside of an animal and have you watch what it does inside the animal. So this is the next best thing. Now we're doing this, again, we'll change animals as we go on. It's going to change vital depths and everything. But as you can see here, this is the correct vital depth for a white-tailed deer. And that's what I decided to start with. There's millions of white-tailed deer hunters all over from, West Coast to East Coast. So it's a very common animal. Now, we also have hide, meat, ribs, all that. And so a lot of people don't realize, and they overestimate, weight has nothing to do with terminal ballistics. It has nothing to do with putting down an animal. You're not shooting a block of clay. You're not shooting, people, their favorite thing to say is, oh, well, this would work on a 200-pound deer, but it won't work on an 800-pound elk. Well, you're not shooting 800 pounds. You're shooting a section of it. And what matters is that depth of penetration and how that bullet goes through. Now, the difference between an elk and a white-tailed deer is a difference of 5 inches of vitals. The elk has 5 more inches. The depth of penetration to reach the vitals is an inch difference. It's 3 inches for a white-tailed deer, and it's 4 inches for an elk. So, again, you're not talking astronomical numbers. The hide thickness between an elk and a white-tailed deer is about 1/8 of an inch. I mean, people think that hide is armored or something. It's really not. The bone structure really isn't that much different. Doing my own taxidermy and also processing my own meat, I cut up a lot of animals. So it's one of those things that once you get to study and actually look, a hide, when that bullet's going, thousands of feet per second, it's going to blow right through. The hide actually itself really doesn't account for a lot of your expansion. What's causing most of that expansion before even getting to there is the bone, muscles, sinew, everything that is under the skin and before the vitals. That hard surface of, that's what it's really, the hide will start it a little bit. But generally speaking, if you look at hides with a bullet hole through, you just have a bullet hole. That it's really not expanding until it starts getting inside. And that's where impact resistance comes into effect. Now, again, these are coming out at a very similar muscle velocity. We're only talking 20 feet per second difference. Now, normally, again, I run my 308 with a 168 a lot hotter than that. However, for this test and how well it shoots, it's great. Our impact velocity, we started at 200 yards for this. Just the simple fact that 200 and in is a very common shot for a whitetail hunter. Most aren't shooting past 200 yards. So at 200 yards, our impact velocity with the ELD Match is 2322 feet per second. So 2,322 feet per second. Now, the Barnes were hitting at 2,303 feet per second. So we're only talking about 19 feet per second difference. So again, it's very similar. However, performance is drastically different. Now, as you can see, we got 2 wound cavities. Now, disappointingly, the TSX, I wasn't quite honestly that surprised. I was a little bit, but it reacted more what I would expect from a full metal jacket. Did it expand? Yes. Did it open up a giant cavity? No. It opened up a smaller cavity. The permanent wound cavity, which is what's left through there after it closes, was only 7/8 of an inch at the widest point, versus the ELD Match, which was 2 inches at the widest point. So, the ELD Match, it went in, it opened up a massive temporary wound cavity. It left a perfect permanent wound cavity. As you can see, the bullet, we got nice expansion out of it. And I was actually able to capture it in the block behind the catch block. The Barnes, I honestly, it just blew right through, and it really didn't get an energy dump. Which the heavier bullet, it had 100 foot-pounds of energy potential more at that distance than the ELD match, the 168. People don't realize this. Energy is only potential. You see that number either in your ballistics calculator or on a box of ammunition, and that is directly dependent on bullet performance. If that bullet doesn't meet the necessary impact resistance and impact velocity and pencils through, well, guess what? You're not getting that energy dump. Now, if you hit it and you get good performance, that bullet expands, it gives you that good performance, you can get that energy dump. But energy is a potential, it's an added bonus. That bullet with the permanent wound cavity can still kill. Now, well, the Barnes, if you're in California or something, some other ridiculous state that doesn't allow lead, that's another one. Politicians, people say, they're saying, oh, lead's bad for it. You can't put lead in the ground. Well, where do you think lead comes from? It's mined from the ground. I mean, seriously. But a solid copper bullet like the TSX will never be able to achieve what a lead core jacketed bullet will do. It can't. But if you see, as we watch these, now we're going to watch both individually. We're going to start with the Barnes, and then we'll go to the ELD match. And then we're going to do them side by side just to show the difference. And there's a couple things I want you to watch. I want you to watch the table, the location of the table. I want you to watch the gel in relation to the table. Where does it move? What does it do? I want you to look at that temporary wound cavity. How large is it? Where does that expansion start and finish? And how does the front layer, that hide and everything, react when hit? You can tell a major difference in that energy dump. Now, let's start off with the Barnes. Now, as you can see here, and we're going to do it at different speeds. So bear with me. We're going to start through at regular speed, and then we'll slow it down so you can see that flight path and everything going with it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Now, as you can see, it hit, it raised it up a little bit, it dropped it down. We did get a temporary wound cavity. It wasn't ideal, and it just blew right through it. Really not what I would call optimal performance. It's not a shot, or it's not a performance that's going to give you a lot of leeway as far as shot placement. If you are off a little bit, especially with that permanent wound cavity, you got to hit the mark. There's no forgiveness. But you can see it really doesn't move. Everything in front, as far as your hide and everything, it just kind of fell down. It really didn't do much. Now with the ELD match, as you can see, we're going to watch this. Watch that table. Now you can see it's actually not only is the gelatin flying back, you have the table moving, the hide and meat and everything is literally flying. And that block of gel has now ended up about 6 feet behind where it started. I mean, that is a massive amount of energy being dumped into that. And that's the difference. Again, we're talking about a lighter bullet at almost the same velocity and impact velocity. And you're getting a way, way better transition of potential energy into that animal. Now, I'm going to leave these intact. I'm not going to sit there and cut these up right now. I'm going to wait until I've finished the other episodes going at medium, which will be around 400 or 500 yards, and then long range around 700-800 yards. I'm trying to get these as low as possible as far as velocity to really show when you start getting into minimum impact velocities. But once I get all of those together, then we'll do an analysis in the further episodes, and we'll cut every single one of these open and compare the different distances at one time. Again, this is the truth. It doesn't matter if it's external ballistics or if it's terminal ballistics. People lie, bullets don't. That's just that simple. And I want to cover this real quick, just for the simple fact of it's a common thing that I hear and get accused of, is talking about people's lack of knowledge when it comes to ballistics. And people get really offended and say, oh, well, you're just calling people dumb. Well, I'm really not. You can be a smart person and not know a subject. If you're not an architect, do you know architectural stuff? No. Does that make you dumb? No, it means you don't know a subject. We get a lot of people that are hunters that say, oh, well, I'm successful. I've killed all these animals. I know what I'm talking about. And they don't have a clue. The best analogy I can use for it is driving a car. Millions of people drive a car every single day. They get to point A to point B. How many people can actually fix that car if it broke down out of those millions? Honestly, not a lot. Does that make them a dumb person? No, it just means they don't know that. Can they still get in a car and drive and get point A to point B and obey the traffic laws? Sure. But does that make them super knowledgeable? No, it doesn't. It's the same thing. Just because somebody can pull a trigger and put it, they can stalk in. Do they have the skills to get into that distance, short or long range? Sure. They can hit that animal. Does that mean they actually understand what's going on inside that animal? Not necessarily. Ballistics, period, is the most misunderstood thing. And terminal ballistics and bullet construction is the number one thing. External ballistics, you get a lot of bad information out there. Terminal ballistics is just incredible, the amount of misinformation out there. And everybody on the internet's an expert. But ultimately, if you're new to this, or you're just simply curious about match bullets, that's what this video series is. We already know from the group, just thousands and thousands of kills with match bullets, what they do in the field. I don't need the gelatin to tell me that, because I've already seen the field results. What this is about is showing people who are coming into it, or somebody who's experienced, wanting to show somebody to educate them what it's doing through that media, what's happening on that animal, which is why instead of just shooting a block, I'm going with animal specs to make sure that you're seeing what each animal and what the difference is. Ultimately, just the first testing at the first distance, the ELD match just absolutely dominated. Now, I don't know about you guys, but, I get called cheap sometimes, which is ironic because my hunting rifles are more expensive than most people's complete hunting setup, including their tent. But people, I ask people, why are you going to spend twice as much? These are $40-something a box for $50. So you're looking at $80-something plus tax for a hunting bullet that gets outperformed by a match bullet, and the match bullets are about $40. They're about half the price. So, I had somebody recently try to say, oh, well, you're just cheap. You don't care about the animal. Well, it's not that. I'm not stupid. I am not going to spend double the money for half the quality, half the results. There's a difference between being cheap and being smart. People can ask money for something and it's not worth it. Now, there's a difference between getting value and getting something that's overpriced. And that's really it. A lot of these hunting bullets out there, and as we keep going, we're going to compare more bullets as I can find them. Again, availability is just a pain right now. But ultimately, you're going to start to see that, a lot of those hunting bullets, especially the premium ones, are ridiculously priced for a lot less performance. So why not go with something, especially because most hunting bullets aren't really made for external ballistic accuracy. They have lower BCs. They're not as accurate to shoot. They're not as aerodynamic. The match bullet's going to give you better shot placement, and shot placement is everything. everybody talks about, a little leeway, which is fine. You want that good temporary wound cavity. You want a little leeway, especially when you get out to distance. But ultimately, a match bullet is going to give you your best chance because of consistency for repeatable results, both external for shooting and terminally. They're more consistent. And the more consistent they're going to perform both externally and terminally. So if you guys want to switch to match ammo, go ahead and switch. It works phenomenally. As we continue this in further episodes, I will get to some closer range stuff too, inside 50 yards, really show you what it can do up close. But we're going to continue these episodes and go long range. So until next time, happy hunting.